Good morning. My name is Joe Clark. I am originally from Augusta, Maine. Was born and raised in Augusta, Maine, and spent the first, 20, 26 years of my life living in Maine, and currently reside in Nebraska, a little village called McCool Junction, right next to Petticoat Junction, as they say. But it's my wife's hometown, but we've been here for about 5 years. Getting back to my roots, started playing hockey around the age of 12 or 13. And when a new ice arena was built in my hometown or near my hometown, and hockey was very foreign in Maine at that time. College program, I think, at the University of Maine started in the mid 70s, I think. But prior to that, hockey was very limited. And when our arena went in, that's when I started playing and really fell in love with the game, fell in love with the position. And it's kind of funny. I really fell in love with goaltending, not at the ice arena, but at the playground at our local school. I went to a private Catholic school called St. Mary's School in Augusta, Maine, and we would have these basically like floor hockey games outside. Everything was frozen. Winters in Maine are tough. People couldn't score on me. I wanted to play goal. I don't know how I wound up in goal there, but I managed to really piss people off because they couldn't score, and I really like that. And I think that was the original seed that was planted. I could really piss people off and frustrate them. So that really kicked everything off. So when the arena was built in our hometown, a couple of friends in my neighborhood wanted to go try it, and I automatically wanted to be a goalie and got equipment. Didn't know it at the time, but it was horrific equipment. Didn't know it, didn't care, but it was a long process for as you look at kids that grow up in tradition-rich hockey areas like Michigan or Massachusetts, Minnesota. I was late starting in the game, but I don't think it had much of an effect. I think as time went on, I played high school hockey, very successful. I had a good team. I had a good group of guys. I think my senior year, I was the MVP of the team. It was a fun time, a really, really fun time. But after that, really had nowhere to go, nowhere to play. There weren't minor leagues, there weren't junior leagues like what exists today, not even close. So I started getting into coaching, and I was encouraged by my high school coach to start helping with kids. So that's really how it all started. And I think it's been a long time. That's 50, 50 years ago. So a lot's happened between now and then.
So, talk a little bit about the idea for this podcast, how we came to be talking today, your relationship with my dad and my brother, and what you inspired you to ultimately hop on here and start talking about hockey.
Well, I met your brother, Garrison, and didn't know who he was, didn't know the name, didn't even know his name.
Was this
But
in Walpole?
what's that?
Was this in Walpole, or where was this at?
No, this was in Auburn, Maine, and he was trying out for a junior team. I'm not sure if he was trying out or just going to a camp, one or the other. But I jumped on the ice with him, and right away I liked certain aspects of his game. Very athletic. He just had some natural instincts that I really liked. And so I started talking to him. Still didn't even know his name. I think I might have known his first name. And I had just started maybe a year or two prior the service that I had now, inside edge goaltending. And, the more I worked with Garrison on the ice, the more we kind of hit it off, and we talked about joining forces. And then I found out who he was. He was the son of Kurt Schilling. And, I'm like, well, I hope this works out. So anyway, I get a call from your dad saying that Garrison's really excited and would like to move forward with it. And that was kind of the beginning. That's how it started. And he invited me down. They just moved to Nashville from the Boston area. They had been down to Nashville around just maybe 4 months, 3 or 4 months. So anyway, I found my way down there and spent maybe 5 or 6 days at your dad's house and just kind of hanging out and getting to know everyone. And he revealed to me that is his love for the position, goaltending, which I found kind of surprising, but not surprising, knowing how competitive Kurt Schilling is. He said, "Boy, you know what? If I could do it all over again, I would have played hockey and I would have been a goalie."
I've heard him say it.
And I said, well, geez, I think he did okay as a pitcher in Major League Baseball, but that just kind of displayed his competitiveness when he made a comment like that. So he's really into it. And knowing your dad now, he dug deep into the goaltending position and what it takes. And we had many great conversations about the position and all the little things that go into it. And more than anything is the mental side of it. And compared goaltending to golf, because basically you're on your own and it's you against everyone else, and you're on your own. You're on an island. And he and I talked about that quite a bit. But that's how I got to know your dad and your family, your mom, and you. I remember meeting you around the pool at your dad's house, and great group of people, and I also got to know your dad's love of animals, which I am. I'm the same way. I love animals. I love especially dogs. I'm a big dog lover. So that's how I got to meet Garrison and
So in the podcast idea.
Yep. The podcast idea, as time went on over the last year or so, he said, you really need to do a podcast. You have so much information to share and experience at all these different levels and in the NCAA and Europe and pro hockey. He said, you really need to do it. And he kept throwing it at me, and I'm like, no, I'm not a podcast type guy. And he kept on me. And it was about a week and a half ago from this date that he called me, just picked up the phone and called me. And he said, you know what? I really need, I think it's a good idea for you to do a podcast. And I said, well, okay. I don't even know how it works. He said, well, my son, Garrick is a producer. And that got me interested because then I kind of know the guy a little bit. I know the family, and I really got the wheels turning, and here we are.
Yeah, producer's a bit generous, but so my goal here is to, because it's a little unnatural to just sit here and talk to a screen by yourself, is to try and what I do with my dad too is also to just form that stream of consciousness, that information that my dad's talking about in your head, out into a digestible format, which will be this podcast. That's my goal here.
Yeah, perfect.
And things like we were just talking about, you spoke about it a little bit when you were growing up, what made you fall in love with the position of goalie, being able to piss people off and get under their skin as the guy who's the stopper. I think that's something that when my dad talks, especially about pitching and being the guy who people want to have the ball, when their back's against the wall. Yeah. Just talk a little bit about the mentality of a goaltender. And you mentioned golf as well. It's a one guy versus the world type of position. Everyone's focused on you.
I brought this up with a lot of goalies, especially ones that play golf. Picture this. You're in the middle of the fairway, you're 150 out, and you're hitting, you got a wedge or a 9-iron in your hand or whatever you hit from 150. And you're looking down the ball, you're looking at the flag, you're looking at the ball, looking at the flag, and your mind's going, and your mind is telling you this is not going to end well. And you can never step on the ice with this mindset or this mentality. So we kind of start from there. And I've had rounds of golf where I have felt absolutely amazing and no worries, and I'm not gripping the club, and I played really, really well and had fun at it. And I've had the opposite. But I've been in that situation where I've been standing over the ball thinking negative thoughts. And as a goaltender, you have to own the ice. It's your home, especially the crease, and you've got to own it. And you are the king. And this is where, really one of the first guys I really pitched this mentality to was Connor Hellebuck. And I was really fortunate to get him at a really early age. I think he was 18, maybe almost turning 19, but his first year out of high school. So all those seeds were planted about the mindset. And it's not really cockiness, it's confidence. You don't have confidence standing over a golf ball. If you don't have confidence standing between the pipes, you're not going anywhere. It's gonna fail. So you want to, try to avoid that. But, that's the main beacon. But there are many small items that, that you're going to go through and or try to tackle that you need to tackle and you need to overcome. I remember sitting in Hellebuck's living room last season, one of my trips to Winnipeg, and he said, he's 32 now, 31 at the time. I remember him telling me, he says, I finally come to a realization that this is like 100% mental, the game. And he's right. Once you get to a level talent-wise, it is 100% mental. And so you better have control of that. But, there's a big difference between an 18-year-old having supreme confidence and a 30-year-old having supreme confidence. So it's not that simple, but it takes time. It's a long process, and you have to fail. You've got to fail at some point, but you need to learn from,
I think it's especially prevalent when we talk about professional athletes too, because these are guys who grew up and they were the best kid in their town until they were 18, the age you're talking about usually. And by the time they're at where Connor is now among his peers, he's clearly obviously a Vezina winner, one of the best in the league, if not the best.
Yep.
But these other guys are also the best shooters in the world. So it's is that ego or whatever you want to call it, is that something that you can obtain more of as an adult or as a 18 plus year old kid? Is that something you can coach?
I think as you get older, you realize how important it is. So if you spend time around any pro athlete, even college athletes, but more so pro, they're all very confident. And to an outside observer, they may say, "Oh, they're super cocky." Well, yeah, you better be. You better have supreme confidence in everything you're doing, because if you don't, again, you're gonna fail. And you take a step back a level to college guys, and I've coached at that level in Division I. There are guys that they seem cocky, but they're not all the way there. All of a sudden, they hit a roadblock, and their confidence just goes away. Pro guys, that happens much, much less. While a pro athlete is going to hit a wall and kind of wonder what's going on, but then they regain their strength. In the case of Connor Hellebuck, I think he's achieved the all the awards he's received, the Vezina 3 times, the MVP, 2 Jennings trophies. He's done really, really well. But you have to attribute that to his level of understanding what he's doing and believing what he's doing, and supreme confidence. And he knows, like, your golf game, when your swing fails you, and like I used to play really well, then I'd experiment, and I'd hit the side of the road pretty easily. With him, when his game, there's some questions about situations, he knows exactly how to fix it. He's at the age, he's at what I call a sweet spot, where physically you could do anything, your body can physically do it. When you're 50, you can't do it. But when you're his age, you can do anything you want. And mentally, he's been through so much, he's mentally bulletproof. So he's at that sweet spot where he has both. And I think he had it early. I think he had it in his mid to late 20s. So I think his career, knock on wood, he's got 6 years left in his deal. And who knows if he's going to play any longer. But the years that he does continue to play, he's right where he needs to be mentally and physically. So it's a challenge, but your confidence, look back at pro athletes, your confidence is absolutely supreme, and it has to be.
Agreed. I think that the golf comparison is really apt, but from my personal experience being around my dad and pitching in baseball, I think that the baseball parallel is even more prevalent, just because there's a team aspect behind it. We talked about, to talk about someone other than Connor for a second, we talked about Jeremy Swayman before we started recording last week, about how 2 years ago it looked like the Bruins had the world in front of them with their number 1 goaltender, and now, of course, it's Boston. So, like any Canadian market as well, it gets volatile really fast. But you talk about the defense in front of him, and like in baseball, defense behind a pitcher. There is a part of that ego and that mental space where you have to be really stalwart in positions like Connor and Jeremy have been in the last few years.
Yeah. You can't become unwound when it all hits the fan. I remember, and I mentioned to you earlier, Garrig, I went to a game in Boston last season, and I'm up in a box with my nephew. I'm watching the game, and I'm the only non-Bruins fan. I don't dislike the Bruins. I just don't really care, but I'm watching as a scout, as a former scout. I'm just observing. Helly's playing in that game, and Winnipeg won 6-2 or something. Watching Boston, I'm like, they're not very good. They don't have any elite talent. They have a great goalie, and actually Swayman didn't play in that game. They used, I'm not sure who their backup was, but a veteran backup. But I've seen Swayman play enough. Like he's really, really good. And
Was it still Linus at the time?
no, the backup?
Allmark?
No, this was this past season. Allmark was in Buffalo last year. They have Corpusalo in Boston. And I think that's what Swayman went through last year. Elite goalie. And I think it was last year where he signed his deal really late, or it might have been 2 years
Yeah,
ago.
that was last year.
And, that kind of put a lot of heat on him. You better perform well. You held out, and you got the money you wanted. Now you better perform well. They had a crap team in front of them, and great coach, because I think Jim Montgomery was the coach at that time. So it was 2 years ago. You watch their team play, they just give up so many good chances that any goalie, doesn't matter if it's Vasilevsky or Hellebuck or Fleury or Swayman, doesn't matter. They're going to give up goals, but you need help. You have to have a good team in front of you, play solid. You're going to come up with a save. You need to come up with, and once in a while, come up with a circus save. And because breakdowns happen even on great teams. But Boston in general, when I'm watching that game, I'm like, man, they don't have a lot of talent. They just didn't have any elite talent. And I think that's an upper management issue. That doesn't really very little to do with coaching. Because coaches don't scout players, they don't sign players. So that's all upper management, and that's tough when coaches like Jim Montgomery lose their jobs. It's kind of dumb, but that's the nature of the business.
We might have to get my dad in here one time just to talk a little bit more about that ego mentality thing.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I think for me personally, that was just something I lacked in playing goalie and pitching, just thinking I was better than a lot of people, because that is a big part of it. But for the broader spectrum of goalie instruction, coaching in general for you, whether a kid's 10, 20, 30, whatever age or competition they're playing at, what is something you always try to have kids take away, whether that be from you personally or the game of hockey?
Well, one thing I do compare goaltending with pitching. I'll tell people, like, look, you look at baseball in general, say there's 1,000 pitchers and they have 1,000 different deliveries to the plate. Right? There's different ways to do it. As a goalie, you choose your own style. You cannot really have a goalie coach go in there and say, you got to play like this. You got to play like this guy. Your instincts are everything as a goalie. So how you see plays developing, and your reads are really important, obviously, but how you handle situations, everyone does it a little differently. Every situation, or how you play every situation, is a gamble. There's no guarantee it's going to work out. So sometimes you just got to play the odds, do the safe thing, and the puck can still go in. But when it gets down to coaching, very specific, I think the most important thing is trust. You have a goalie coach and you have a young goalie, or any age goalie. That goalie has to trust the individual giving him advice and instruction. And if that trust isn't there, it's not going to work. And the goaltender needs to understand that, yeah, this guy talking to me has been around, and he's worked with different people, very successful people, and he knows what he's talking about. So I think the very first thing is trust. And the second thing, you have to be a great skater. Your edges, you have to have the ability to stay as big as you can, as long as you can, and not wind up on your ass, not wind up on your stomach. Although those things happen once in a while, you got to try to limit that. But your ability to maneuver in the paint, it's a very finite area, and it's a small space between the pipes. Stay between the pipes, as much as you can, but you have to be a great skater. And I remember when I was scouting with the Islanders, being a rink with one of the goalie guys, Chris Terreri, who was a great goalie in college, and he had a long NHL career. And he's been with the Islanders for a long time as one of their goalie guys. And he and I really hit it off. And I remember him kind of when we first met each other, we were in a rink watching a very particular goaltender, because we had to draft a goalie that year, and we're watching this kid, and he asked me, he says, "Do you think he's a good skater?" And he's kind of testing me because skating is number one on the list of qualities that you want in a goalie, and you have to flow. I mean, you've got to really be smooth and fast and strong. And we're talking about this one kid. He says, "Do you think he's a good skater?" And I said, "No. He's not. He's not there." And you have to really know what you're looking at to be able to analyze the way that's going to be beneficial for the team. But you got to recognize things and recognize good skaters versus very average skaters or below average. I remember we had one kid on our list early, and we're in Lincoln, Nebraska, and we're watching this kid play in the USHL. And he said, he can't do crossovers. We're watching warm-ups, and I'm watching what I'm watching, but Chris is watching his kid who's watching his feet. And he said, he can't cross over. I said, no. And he said, watch him. So I watched him, and he was right. So the details that goalie coaches look for in goaltending runs really deep, but I think, getting back to the instruction and what we try to teach, skating is number one, and power. As kids get older, you get your leg strength. I call it man strength. And some goalies don't get that until they're in their 20s.
I'm
Really.
still waiting.
Yeah, yeah. But, it's one thing, to me, it's one thing to have, some power, some strength, but you've got to keep climbing in the ranks. You have to have elite power in your legs and the ability to stay in the fight and to stay upright. And like I said before, stay as big as you can, as long as you can. But, but getting back to what we want to teach goaltenders, there's certain situations that are awkward, and I like working on that. Like I sent you a video the other day of a drill that we do. It's called a scissor drill, and a guy, eventually the path of the shooter's in the dot lane, so he's outside and he's near the bottom of the circle. So
I'll put it in here so that when you're talking about it, you can see what coach is talking about.
And it's a really awkward situation because you don't really know if you should go into a post load or square up to the guy so the puck is right here. It's a tough thing. So I like to practice that, because if you never practice it, if you don't get reps in, then you're never going to be comfortable with it. And in a game situation, you need to use whatever move, if you want to call it a move, whatever you're going to do, you need to do it consistently, and you need to do it with confidence. And you can't do that unless you get reps. There's probably, 300 drills that I know, there's probably 6 or 7 that I do all the time. And some of the younger goalies that I have, the junior age goalies, like, geez, we do this all the time. And I say, well, you need this. You need to know this like the back of your hand, and have it be comfortable. And if it's not comfortable, then you're going to look like a goalie who has no confidence, and people can smell that, and it's like blood in the water for a shark. So anyway, I like to really hammer on awkward situations, whether it's guys coming from behind the net, or whether it's really bad angle shots, because you can't give up those goals in a game. You can't get beat, and you're going to be able to handle it and manage the puck, and try to know where the puck's going, put it where you want it to be, and manage rebounds. There's a million different things to really hammer on, but that's a one part of being an effective goalie coach, is knowing, what you say and how you say it and when you say it is everything. Your tone, your timing is really, really important. And I remember talking to NHL goalie, Eddie Lack, and this is years ago, and he was going through a rough stretch. He was playing in Carolina, I don't remember who the goalie coach was, but Eddie just had a tough season. He had a lot of injuries that year, so his play was sporadic, and sometimes he just didn't play well. Well, he finally had a game where he played really, really well. I think he won 2-0, and the goalie coach comes down and sits next to him in the locker room and says, "Yeah, boy, it's a good thing they didn't find all those empty nets. That would have been a different game, you know." And it just popped his bubble right away. Eddie telling me that story was a great example of, how you say it, when you say it, what you say. It means everything to a goalie. And you can't. I think it's impossible to coddle goalies. You can't. There's no way, because they have to play the game, and playing the game by itself will keep you humble, right? And so you can't coddle goalies. I mean, I think some coaches, there are coaches out there who just don't understand. They understand everything about the game. They understand systems, defensive zone, neutral zone, offensive zone, all situations, but they don't get goaltending. And that frustrates a lot of coaches. It really does. And it scares them. So sometimes they don't know what to say. And usually the best thing to do is not say anything, and have your goalie coach go talk to him. So that's typically in the NHL. I believe obviously it's what they do. And, but at lower levels, college, for example, or even junior hockey, I think more so in junior hockey, you can't find goalie coaches or good ones. They don't grow on trees. So you have people talking to goalies just saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. Not always, but I hear about it quite a bit, and it's really, really frustrating.
In the worst case scenarios, I think it's critical to be able to be uncomfortable and be comfortable in that discomfort, because you're talking about those split second decisions are what separate the best from the greatest of all time.
Yeah. 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 100%. I mean, coming up with big saves, having the confidence to do it, doesn't matter what the score is, the situation, you have a 3-1 lead with 3 minutes left. Well, look at St. Louis and Winnipeg, in game 7. St. Louis has a 3-1 lead, and they give up 2 goals in the last couple of minutes and then lose in overtime. I mean, you know, Jordan Binnington is a very good goaltender. Obviously, anyone in the NHL is going to be a pretty good goalie, but it happens. I mean, what was going through his mind when it went from 3-1 to 3-2? Is it an oh shit moment, or does he not care? And my mentality is you got to not care. You just go play the game, and you don't worry about it, because that's how, if you don't do that, that's how goalies become completely unraveled. And then you got them.
As a Bruins fan and an American, I'm pretty sure that Binnington doesn't give a F about me or Four Nations or the Stanley Cup he took from me, but yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else, Coach, that you want to cover? I think this is like a good half an hour time frame.
Yeah.
On the first episode.
No.
I mean, I think that we have a lot more. I was writing down questions for future episodes to dive deeper into. You talked about a bunch of drills that you've either made up or know 300 drills, but you use about 5, 6, 7 usually most of the time. I think that's interesting.
To train, to really. I remember Helly made a comment once where he said, what was ingrained in me during my developing stages, like junior hockey, and he used the word ingrained, and then that really kicked in for me. Like, okay, I got to make sure these kids know this part really, really well, and then use that word ingrained. So him using that phrase really, was a key for me to make sure that I make sure that these kids are coached in a certain way, and in certain situations they know how to handle that. So it worked for him pretty well, and we need to make sure that the kids are, you nail it with these kids.
You have anything else, Coach, other than that?
Nope, I'm good.
Alrighty.
Good. So I'll think of some more angles, and I'm sure you will too.
If you come up with anything like middle of the night, later in the week, or something you just want to bookmark, feel free to just use our text thread as hey, I'm going to try and remember this, or I want you to look this up, or have more information or statistics or anything you need from me.
Yeah, I'll text you some topics that we can dive into.
All right.
That's easy, and there's a million of them. So We'll grow it. We'll grow it pretty well.
Yep.
Yep. Awesome. All right.
Sounds good, Coach.
Thank you, sir. Have a
Yeah,
good day.
absolutely.